Hey guys, welcome to the podcast. In today's episode, I talk with my good friend Mohammed Ghorani. Ghorani studies computer science at the University of Nottingham in Malaysia. In this episode, we talk about the importance of being diverse in the skill set that you have and in the personality that you bring to a company. But we relate on the level that we don't really want to specialize very early on in our careers. We talk about Ghorani's internship at a marketing agency in Malaysia and his future goal to blend all his interests into one career. It's interesting that even though he studies computer science, he doesn't seem to be interested in the technical aspects of the course and more towards the bigger picture things like a managerial position or negotiating with clients. If you guys haven't watched Michelle's episode, I think that's episode 12, we touch on that a bit and discuss gender roles in society, and go on to discuss things like equality of opportunity versus equality of outcome. We then go on to talk a bit about Ghorani's background migrating from Syria to Malaysia. As always, don't forget to subscribe and share. And without further ado, here's Mohammed Ghorani. Bro, how are you? It's been a while.
Yeah, well, everything is good, man. This whole last 3 months, I've been doing nothing but my internship, and it's still going. I'll finish supposedly by the end of this month. But I'm actually learning a lot, so I'm kind of enjoying it at the same time.
What are you doing?
Other than that, I'm doing sales and digital marketing, which is completely unrelated to computer science.
Yeah.
And that's the best thing about it, because I'm not a huge fan of coding. These stuff are not for me. I don't think I'm cut out for coding.
Yeah.
What about you? How's Qatar? You just reached back.
I just reached, bro. I can honestly tell you, I've been outside once, and then I went back inside to my house, and then I have to be in my home for quarantine for 1 week, or else I get fined
1 week.
200,000 riyals. So
God, no.
that's not something to joke about.
Let's not pay that.
Yeah, inshallah. But it's been good. I just finished my internship like you.
Nice.
But it's something much more related to my field rather than. Wait. I want to ask you, right? To me, you've always seemed like someone that, I think we have a lot of similarities in the sense that, we both have experienced, video editing and marketing and things like that, and like getting brand strategy and things like that. So how come you're doing computer science in the first place?
Right. So, okay, this is actually an interesting story. I thought, okay, so I grew up, I thought, I'm into tech and I'm into a lot of the computer science stuff. And I've always been, I've had this enthusiasm about, learning those new, I thought computer science was all about those new tricks and hacks you do. And I was a bit naive when it came to it. So during high school, I thought about it. I was like, okay, everyone, talked about what do you want to do in the future and everything. I was like, yeah, I want to do computer science. I definitely know what I want to do. And that's something I think at a young age we mistake. We think we definitely know what we want to do. But the minute I started doing the foundation, I was like, yeah, this is not bad. And then a few months later, after I went for undergrad the first year, I'm like, holy crap, this is not something I'm enjoying, the whole technical part about it, the coding and, sitting behind the desk for hours trying to find that small bug in your code. I'm just like, this is not what I want to do. And then I thought maybe I could change. Okay. I started actually diving into my own interests that included business, economics, other things, marketing, sales. And I was like, this is the stuff I actually care if I want to do this. I want to, read books. That was more natural. But when it came to computer science, I would literally not spend more than 1 hour without rage quitting while coding. Or it's insane, it's ridiculous. You think you understand, it makes you feel like the dumbest person on the planet.
Yeah.
And it's not easy. It's not easy. And you get that help from Google, Stack Overflow, the classic stuff. But still, I thought maybe if I were to read different stuff, I could actually find what I like. And that happened, psychology was a huge change for me, in fact, because I even took some modules in foundation in year 1. And I think that's what struck my interest to realize it's not computer science, it's something else,
But you still carried on with it.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, because if you think about it from the perspective of jobs, I thought about it. Okay, if I were to carry on with this and integrate my computer science knowledge and the background with whatever I want to do, that would be completely fine. And computer science degree in Nottingham is not very broad. There are a lot of specific things that if you do and integrate into what you want to do in the future in marketing or sales or the business, I think it would be huge. And understanding and talking to the tech people will be much easier. So the whole idea of connecting some business background, some psychology background, some computer science and coding and AI, I thought, what, this could be it. Because I love connecting things together. I think I'm that kind of person. I don't like specializing in one thing, very deeply, but rather, pick different things and connect them together and find something useful.
I think I relate to that in the sense that, I did engineering, but I can't ever say that I'm passionate about engineering, right? It's just like what you said, it's a job. It's a degree that you take that will probably open up doors in terms of jobs, right? And like I think the way that I rationalize it is that it's just a foundation, and it doesn't mean that I can't have all these other interests, which it's funny because like things like psychology is like I never would have thought that I'd be interested in it, but it's just like over the first 2 years of your undergraduate, you're like, wait a second, psychology, philosophy, what are all these things?
Exactly.
And I think like if you were to ask me, and I think a lot of people are in these shoes, that it's almost like they made their decision too early, right? And like if I were to go back and choose another degree, I probably wouldn't have chosen engineering. And it looks like you're in the same shoes.
100%, 100%. And but maybe now I look at it, from a perspective that okay, maybe I did now, and maybe it's a good thing because that will push me to kind of expand my technical side. As much as I suck at it or I'm not that great at it, it helps me understand it very well. And if the price is, going through some tough times, for 3 years, it's okay. It's worth it. And I think that comes back again to people, pursuing their passion and thinking, if you do not pursue your passion in your degree, then it's pretty much done or something like that. But yeah, this is what I think is different. Is you're not supposed to really always follow your passion because it's not a degree that existed. Because if you were born in the 1800s, I mean, how on earth would you know that you're into computer science? That thing did not exist. So it makes no sense. I don't find it, it doesn't click in my head that passion is something that exists. It's rather something in your personality or in your temperament that you could bring along to whatever the field is. That way, not only you'll have less of a miserable time, but you will excel and you'll love doing whatever it is. Because, for example, when it comes to data science, people usually think of, statistics, computers, and all that stuff, but it's more of problem solving. It's not, people look at it as a degree by itself or as a science, but it's more of a problem solving rather than just a title. And that's, I think, something many people they overlook, unfortunately.
So would you say rather than kind of like, approach the usual conversation is like, what am I going to be in the future, right? It's more like you should take it from a personality perspective. It's like, what type of person do I want to be in the future?
It's like, who am I first,
Yeah.
It's like the self-awareness aspect is very overlooked. People think they're good in something or they're told something at a young age or their father said something, or their mother. And then it sticks with them. It's like, yeah, I should maybe pursue medicine. I should pursue engineering. But should you really? Do you have what it takes? Because the amount of people, for example, that did engineering and ended up doing something completely different is ridiculous. You don't understand, like, the amount of people I met. I'm like, what did you study? Engineering. And they're in sales or marketing. I'm like, what is going on here, man? Are all the engineers here? What's going on? It's kind of crazy.
Yeah. Speaking about this, have you kind of found out like what it is you kind of gravitate towards then? Is it marketing?
For now, marketing. I see myself hopping on different things, but marketing and sales is one of them for now.
Tell me about your internship then.
The internship. Okay, so the first month, supposedly, before I got the internship, actually, I applied for a company called Hayes. I think you might know it.
Is that?
And Corona started, and then boom, I get this automatic rejection, like, yo, sorry about this, but you're not gonna come anymore. I'm like, whoa, what happened? They're like, yeah, Corona happened and we stopped hiring. I'm like, okay, well, it's fine, no worries. But then I remember there was this guy that used to lecture at our university, and he left to go full time for his company. His name is Hani, and his company he started in digital marketing. And I remember he wanted someone in sales or something like that. So I contact him. I'm like, hey, I heard this and that, and you used to teach us at Nottingham. Let me know if there's an opening. And then, I go to the interview, and he's like, okay, this is the contract, you can sign it. And, I didn't expect it to happen so quick. It happened, I think, in a matter of 2 days.
But he
And he was like, okay, he knew of me, but he didn't know me.
Mm-hmm.
If that makes sense, because I think we've seen each other on campus, but we never really talked. And he was a lecturer in computer science, ironically, which is funny. His background is computer science. He did digital marketing again. So I get the internship. First month, absolutely horrible. It was very new. I couldn't get my job was, get those meetings and arrange them and have some sort of discussions so we could see how the clients, or the potential prospects would proceed. And I couldn't do it well the first month because I think there were a few reasons. One of them was it's a horrible market at the moment. Two was I was struggling to understand how the industry works when it comes to this part because I was very, very new. And the other was it was a bit saturated, just a bit.
Just to be clear, what kind of market was the company operating in?
It was in higher education. That was the main specialization of the company. And to go to all these institutes and universities, and for example, pitching about one of their products was an e-learning platform. It's like you have to go to a university and convince someone in charge, hey, we are deserving of your time, and we are going to tell you about our product, and you should take a look at it. Here's why. And to just get through that process, it seems very simple, but it takes a hell of a time. It's not easy. It can be aggressive, and sometimes, not very aggressive and competitive. That's for sure. And no one is as nice and welcoming as you think they might. It gets like that.
Mm-hmm. So then after your first month, did things get a bit better?
Way, way better. Because I think I started to get a way better idea I started understanding people's patterns. I started looking at what opens up to them more. And from there, after picking up those patterns, I would try to experiment different approaches. Because, the first month had to be a lot of experimenting. I was improvising a lot. I was learning from the internet courses, everything you can think of, even tips from people who already worked. And I would apply it in different ways. And the second month, I see all the results of the first month coming in like crazy. And it's surprising. And then the third month, even way crazier. The people at the company started being really, really happy with me. And I didn't expect that. I thought, I went through some period of time where I was like, okay, am I really bad at this? Is it me? Or is there something I should be looking at that I'm missing? And it took, I think, more than a few weeks to realize what the problem was and how to solve it.
What was it?
It was simply experience, lack of experience. I realized if I had the experience of the first month, I would definitely not have struggled with any of the issues that I had. Because, someone who came from computer science, yes, I was good at people, I was good at communication, all of that. But it wasn't enough to know how the market works. You need some knowledge and hands-on experience to know how to speak with people and know what they need to hear and how they want to hear it.
And that's something that's really difficult to learn without doing, right? I mean,
Yeah, and being also a foreigner is, I think, helped me also get the advantage of I've been here for 8 years, right, in Malaysia. So getting to know the people and how their culture in work, not only their culture as students or as people outside, but in work was very, very interesting for me.
In what sense?
From a personality sense. For example, you'd expect people here to be okay. If you were to do some comparison between here and a Western country, when it comes to talking and communication, for example, here people prefer emails and messages more than they prefer direct calls. So you could think of cold calling as something that is not as common, or it doesn't work as you'd expect it to be. So that was very important to know. You think, okay, maybe if I called and talked, it would work, but that's not how it works. No one wants to pick up a call from a stranger who they have no idea about. So you have to go through some kind of introductory process, and then you talk to them, and then they hear about you through LinkedIn or what else, other platforms that there is, and then you can actually start, connecting. Then they think, okay, maybe you're deserving of my time. But if you're going to cold call me, for example, and tell me, hey, this is what do we do, and you start doing the pitch, people will either hang up or tell you, we're not interested, or call me later, the whole thing. So I think it required a lot of thick skin in the beginning as well.
Yeah. I think I sort of relate to that. As someone that is a freelancer, right? What you're doing seems to be networking, right? It is literally just, how do you get clients to come to you? And it's a really difficult question to solve, because like people think that, you want better clients, you have to go out to them. But sometimes that just isn't the case. The better thing to do is how do you get them to come to you?
That's the next step. That would be what a good salesman does. I don't only go and pitch to you, but I make you want me to pitch to you. That's, I think, another level. And, you have to not be traditional when it comes to the techniques and the way you talk and everything, because people become immune to them. And
what do you mean?
The minute you start assuming people, for example, they're less smart than you, or they don't see what you're doing, that's a huge mistake.
Yeah.
People are usually not stupid, and if you assume that they're smart enough, things change. The perspective changes a lot.
Is this something you've just learned recently in terms of like doing it in a professional setting?
I think I learned it not in a professional setting, but rather in general, not even in work. So this is something I've learned throughout life, I would say, is that never treat people as if they're going to be more stupid than you, or they have nothing to offer you, because that's most of the time false. And if they see through that, the minute that they understand how you perceive them, they will trust you less, and it won't be beneficial in any sense in the future. And who doesn't want to be trusted?
Yeah. So how long left do you have for your internship then?
I'm supposed to finish, I think, on 15th September.
Oof. And then you have a week before the next semester starts.
It's surprising. I thought I would be like, oh, I finished my internship and now I have to go to uni and I didn't have time to, relax and stuff. But that's not true, because I swear to God, I enjoyed the work so much and I still have so much free time. And it doesn't feel like I've been working. I cannot believe that it's been already 3 months, That's the part that shocks me. Like, I was able to do this for 3 months without complaining or saying I don't want to do this.
Wait, hold up. How do you, people always say, like, when you work, you don't have free time, but like, how have you sort of found that balance between, like, enjoying work? I don't hear people say they enjoy work very often.
That's true. I think, okay, here's the thing. When it comes to new experiences, I get very hyped. I get very hyped in general. If it's something new, something I don't understand, I get intrigued and I want to understand how that thing works. So it's like there are always new projects, or there are always new people. And that's something, okay, that comes back again to personality and work. So let's say you're a person who likes new things, who always likes to try different recent things. You're not going to like a job that is very monotonous, and it's the same routine all the time. You're going to pretty much hate your life. on the other hand, you want to pick something that will bring something new to your life, something that is original. And that, I think, for me, is always people. People always surprise you. They'll find ways to, intrigue you, new ways to talk to them, new techniques to, get your sales pitch in and whatsoever. So that is very crucial when it comes to work and your personality. It's like, who are you? How does your motivational, neural system works? And work according to that, because the better you adjust your temperament to your workspace, the more likely you're going to excel and do better overall. And you're going to like the time and end up only climbing up instead of hating your job and waiting for the weekend and hating Monday, all that kind of mentality.
I can say during my internship, I was doing that. I wasn't hating my job, but it wasn't, there's a bit of like envy on my part because it sounds like what you're working on is like pretty dynamic, whereas like the responsibilities they gave me was just like, every once in a while
Right.
they told me to like scan something.
Oh yeah, I understand that. I think that comes also with big companies. So if you go for huge companies, very known big names, if you're an intern, I think they will try to give you a specific task and they want you to do it in the best way possible for a certain period of time. If you go for companies that are, a bit new, less than 10 years old or 5 years old, they will involve you in more than one thing, especially if they don't have many employees. And I think that's something good about internship is that I would go for a company that is not very big, they don't have many staff. I'll likely to get more experience and I'll struggle and it will be like very messy and weird, but you'll end up going out feeling like, okay, you're more confident in a sense. It's like be a big fish in a small pond better than being the smallest fish all the time in a sense.
Did you get this from a Malcolm Gladwell book? Because
no, but I heard it actually from someone else who quoted that.
Okay. Yeah,
because that book, actually, I read it. It's pretty good. Which one? The Outliers?
Outliers is pretty good. Blink, I think that one is from Blink. If you've read it. But yeah.
There was a Tipping Point as well. I'm not sure if you read that. It was a great book.
The Tipping Point I haven't read yet. I also have What the Dog Saw, and I still haven't read that yet. But in terms of my internship, I do complain about it that, the responsibilities, it's kind of boring and all that. But if anything, I'm like, I learned things that I don't want to do. And it's almost
exactly. It's the greatest start, actually. If you know what you don't want to do, that's beautiful. And people think it's just a negative experience. Not really. At least you know what you don't want to do now, right? It's amazing.
Yeah.
And that happened with computer science, for example. Now I know I don't want to do computer science.
Yeah, but it seems like you still kind of appreciate, like, the doors that it might open. Like, okay, you kind of have that sort of technical background because I'm assuming you finish your degree. You have 1 year left, right?
Yeah.
So you'll finish your degree, but it's almost like, okay, now you have the key to all these big tech companies, like Dell or Intel or all these things, and you're like, you know what? Okay, I'm gonna start with one of them, and then see where my interest and my personality kind of takes me in that sort of company.
100%.
At least that's the way that I want to do it,
For now, I think it's also okay for companies. What they've been doing, if you notice, when you apply for jobs, they do a lot of online assessments online, by the way. And many of them include tests in IQ in a subliminal way. So they will try their best to find out how smart you are or what is your intelligence, because they know that's going to affect their work. And at the same time, they also see your personality in some senses. And I was talking to one of my friends the other day, Osama, I'm not sure if you remember him.
Mm-hmm.
He was telling me about those assessments and how they give him like a report at the end of what he is better at and what he lacks, his strengths and weaknesses automatically without even reaching the interview part. And that's interesting because if you're a company, you already know you want to hire the best person for the job. You don't care about, like now it's becoming, I care less about who you are, where you're from, your religious background, all of that. I just want to know if you're the best person for the job. Even if it means my company is gonna be like 80% men, or 80% international, or 80% like whatever. Yeah, I saw you just now smiling. I think you probably remember the conversation. There was like a huge thread on your Instagram video, right, regarding the whole men, women.
I think I read through briefly where you were coming from, and I mean, that was a good segue into this part because I wanted to talk to you about this as well. But first, I read briefly through your conversation. I didn't want to reply because I didn't know really what to say, so I was just like, it's interesting. And I think we have sort of the same views in terms of kind of like, these sexist biases may not actually be biases. And I think we have a lot of the views we have are kind of coming from the same source in terms of, I think we both listen to Jordan Peterson, here and there.
He's one of the, I think, when it comes to psychology and sociology, I think and philosophy as well, like a lot of things I listen come from him. But I also listen to the other spectrum, you know what I mean? Because you have people, for example, on the end of Sam Harris, and then you have people on the end of Jordan Peterson. You have so many different people from different political backgrounds. And it's good that way because you have like, the overall view of how things are around. Yeah. And I think, her name was Michelle, right?
Michelle, yeah.
Michelle, right. So when we were talking on Instagram on that specific part of the video, I think the problem was, or what she failed to understand, I was trying to say that there is no point in cherry picking one field and wanting women to be representative of that field. Or if that field happened to be all women, I'm pretty sure there would be no problem about the whole sexism bias whatsoever. The problem becomes when people devalue women because they do not work in the highest competitive fields. And it's like, okay, but why would you consider things to be good in a society if you have women only in STEM? Would that satisfy the agenda? Is that sufficient?
Yeah. I think that's not a perspective I've heard before, and I think that it sort of makes sense. It's like what you're doing is you're kind of judging them based on a particular agenda, in this case STEM.
That's right.
Yeah.
And it's like, okay, if we had now 90% women in STEM, what's gonna happen to the men who, by the way, most men are interested in things rather than people. At some point or another, if you do have the whole 50% happening, you will have a huge number of men, for example, who won't find a place where they should be participating in. And by the way, instead of having a higher, production value of anything that we have in the market, things will become worse. You will not produce the most efficient workforce at your company.
What do you mean by that?
It won't be possible. If you have always a 50% situation in the company, if it's engineering. Because are you sure you're going to get 50% women engineers in any company? That's ridiculously difficult. And there is a narrative about women being not encouraged to do engineering. But, I mean, do you want to force women to be engineers so the whole 50-50 things happen? It's kind of ridiculous when you think about it from an equality of outcome kind of point of view. Because then you'd have to do that for everything. And if you do that for everything, it gets even messier. It becomes a whole new problem that you need to solve.
I think the preconception is that, equality is good, right? But people don't kind of go deeper than that and don't really define what they mean by equality. And like a lot of people just kind of think that equality just means equality of outcome, right? And so there's this like misconception that if everything was equal, then males and females would be exactly the same, and it would be natural to have 50% in any field. And that's simply just like, in terms of like even psychology, that's completely ignoring all the facts. and kind of like dismissing all the differences in traits of the two different genders.
That's true. Or 64. I mean, according to Canada's new laws, whatever. I think 70 now.
What
I'm not sure. In Canada, you have around, I think, 70 genders. 70, or plus.
I see.
Like you said, 2-3 genders. I was like maybe 74 according to some countries.
I don't.
And
I don't even want to get into that.
Yeah, it's a whole nother thing, to be honest with you. But I think, Michelle, if you're listening to this, what I wanted to say is that I'm going to send you the studies. I forgot to send the studies about the egalitarian countries in Scandinavia and how the woman ended up being less interested in the fields you were talking about, STEM specifically. Actually, the ratio in nurse, like if you go to nurses, the ratio of women to men is ridiculously polarized. It's, I think, was it 10-1 or even more?
There's something like 80 or 90% women.
Yeah, it was crazy. It's like it's like why are we not complaining about that one as well? We don't have 50% representation. But see, it's becoming a problem of, hey, if I'm not in these specific fields, I'm not as much as valuable to society. And I think there is, if you go on to the underlying narrative, is that people want to think everything's the same and nothing deserves a higher place. But that is not true from the base.
What do you mean?
It's like,
what do you mean?
When you're born, for example, your perception and how you see things, everything will eventually have a higher value in your perception. So things in your life some things will have a less value and some things will have higher value. It's like, but the problem is now what I'm seeing is that people want to say everyone is special, everyone deserves the same outcome and the same salary and the same, everything has to be the same. Mm-hmm. That's the narrative that I see as problematic, when in fact people are not really the same, and acknowledging differences is important. And we have to understand that it is okay. It doesn't make you less valuable if you're not in certain fields, or if you're not as rich. And because there is also another problem with people, for example, attacking rich people. It's like, oh, if you're rich, you're exploiting poor people, and you're in the top 1%, and you're one of the bad people, and you should be distributing your wealth. That's another problem with that. And if you just kind of see the pattern of thinking or their ideologies when it comes to what is of value and what is not, is becoming more about what you do rather than the intrinsic value as a human being that we have.
Why do you think it is? Why do you think that is? That it's becoming more based on what we do rather than, I guess, values.
Honestly, I would blame a lot of the liberals that would be going that direction, because if you look at all the civil rights movements and people wanting equality, or some people will be disadvantaged, and they will take that as an advantage. Ironically, it's like, hey, I came from a worse background than yours, so I'm entitled to something. Yeah, and it continues like that. And then someone will be like, oh, what about us? We're marginalized, we're hated, we're a minority. And at some point, everyone becomes a minority of a minority, and everyone deserves something. And it's like the society owes you. And it's becoming more about what the government, we're starting to confuse what's the government's job and what is the company's jobs and what is our job. Like, for example, even I'm sure you see a lot of on LinkedIn people complaining about rejections on LinkedIn, or they say, oh, I got this automatic rejection. How could you do that? You're supposed to tell me, why you're supposed to call me. And like, there was a huge rant. It's like, what do you expect? If you were an employer and you have 1,000 applications, what am I going to call every person and be like, hey, honey, so here's the thing. We didn't accept you because of a few things. And I know your time was very valuable, but we're sorry. No one's going to do that. No one's going to do it. You have thousands of applications. You have to kind of understand the other end. And that there is this entitlement in us that is growing, that everybody should give me something, or the society should give me something, or the government should give me something because I came from X background or Y background,
Mm. I think Peterson says that what it is. There's a lot about the things that we cry a lot about the rights that we're supposed to have, but at the same time we don't talk about the responsibilities that we need to have as people.
Because it is the dream. Think about it. People are realizing, okay, wait a minute. So I can get this and that without even committing to a responsibility. Well, sign me up right now. Why wouldn't I go for it? There is always with an ultimate, it's a very cliche from Spider-Man, the saying, with great power comes great responsibility. Yeah. But also with great responsibility comes great prizes and, things that you get in return. You're not supposed to get things for free. And that's another problem that you see people are advocating for, It's like always, everything should be free, the demanding of the society. And there is a huge problem with that. It's like it's becoming the society, everything is becoming more subjective, and the society will eventually control what they want or what they don't want, or what is moral and what is immoral.
Yeah.
And I see that as a problem because, well, okay, what's going to happen in a few hundred years? What if they change their mind about murder, or anything that it's ridiculous to talk about now?
I think
what would be okay in a few years, or not few years, few decades, or few centuries.
I think there's a bit of a narrative now. It's like just talking about that. Like there's a movement where pedophilia is becoming okay as well. It's like, oh, okay.
Oh no, there was like a whole movement, from pedophiles saying that, we should not. Of course, we're not going to act upon being pedos, but you should acknowledge our needs and wants. It's like, no, we shouldn't.
It's like if you're a serial killer, imagine a serial killer is like, you should acknowledge our needs and wants.
Because now it's becoming, we're gonna blame the environment more than we're gonna blame the person and his free will. And it's becoming, okay, if it's always the society's fault, then we should empathize and sympathize with killers and criminals in general. And it's like, okay, so you're saying everything is social construct. Well, okay, then I guess it's no one's fault. Right? It's no one's fault. It was always nurture. And that's, again, there's a whole debate about nurture and nature that goes long. We can talk about it later. But yeah, it's going to get too philosophical.
Nature and nurture comes a bit into the gender roles as well. I mean, talking about the Scandinavia studies, it's like, people think nurture is one of the things that makes females in general not want to go into STEM. But then it's like if you look at like what you said, one of the most egalitarian societies, Scandinavia, right, where opportunity is basically as open as they can be. The differences become more pronounced than societies where it's like, the opportunities are less, and I think that's really interesting.
Right, I think okay, just to give some context, I think people who didn't follow up on the whole conversation that we had on Instagram. Basically, there's a whole argument that women are not getting their opportunities to work in STEM fields because it's getting boiled down to, the bias of either machine learning or algorithms or the previous people that used to hire, and how they only used to hire because you're a man and not because of your skills. And there was a lot of controversy about this. Now, the idea is that there has been a lot of research, and if you read about in the literature of men and women and differences, the narrative that comes usually is that, hey, men and women are the same, but they're only different when it comes to the biological senses. Now, science has come to tell us, no, actually, they're different in more than the biological senses, and that there are psychological differences, and we have to address them. And if we talked about them, it becomes a bit controversial to the feminists in general, and that they see it as something bad, and that gender is a social construct, and women were always oppressed and they couldn't get the job that they wanted to do. Well, in fact, there were a lot of natural psychological traits that would encourage a man or a woman to go in certain fields. So the study we were talking about just now is a study that was done in the Scandinavian countries, which are one of the most egalitarian countries. Or, I don't think you'll find a better place, right? Is there any other country that is as egalitarian? I don't think so.
Afghanistan.
And they try so hard to always socialize their kids in a way that, hey, we're always the same, there's nothing different about us, and they encourage them to do the same things. And apparently in those countries, what happened was the more egalitarian it was, the more likely men and women went for different things. So they minimized the environmental differences, but they ended up maximizing the biological ones, as well as psychological. So women ended up going for things that, interest, as women have interest in people, and men ended up going for things that have interest in things, like the studies usually show. So that was, a comeback to the people who were saying, well, that's because we didn't have egalitarian societies. Well, now we do, and it's still the same. The studies are consistent. They're still being replicated as we speak, and there hasn't been change of answers until now.
It's yeah, this is where the importance of it, like, if you want to strive for equality, you should strive for equality of opportunity. But the thing is now, if people do read studies like that, they're like, wait a second, I don't want to strive for that because that's not in line with what my idea of what equality should be.
That's the thing. And it comes back from these days how universities are being taken over by leftists. Like, you're being taught things from a lens, that is, hey, very left-like. And what do you expect, even when it comes to science itself? And if you're being taught all these subjects, including liberal arts, that are very related to, society and how morality, how things should behave, it's like, okay, well, how do you expect people to start thinking after a few years? They're going to grow up thinking, this is science, this is the truth. Or, well, in the modern days, truth is subjective. It's not always objective. But there is actually both. There is subjective and objective truth. And even when it comes to philosophy, if you're being taught philosophy, it will be taught from that lens. So you've got a whole bunch of generations who are going to be taught these things, these subjects, from a narrow point of view. And anyone else who thinks otherwise is either backwards or, a conservative, and it's a bad thing if you are, apparently. So that's again a bigger problem that we're facing.
Yeah. How did you sort of come into this, like, all these studies about psychology and philosophy? Because I kind of know my background, but I'm interested is, like, a lot of people these days, they seem to be, at least the people that I interact with, they seem to have sort of similar diets in terms of the media that we consume, at least maybe amongst guys. So I'm interested what the trigger actually was.
I would say, okay, I'll be honest with you, that at the very beginning, when I started looking into these things, at first, when I see these movements or everyone talking about certain things, I'm like, I just started thinking a bit critically. I'm like, okay, but is this really true? I'm a bit of a skeptical in general. I like to dig into things, find out if they're really true, and then if they're not, I'll question some more. And it started from a young age. So from 15 or 16, I would dig into religion, everything, philosophy, psychology, everything that we are told by the media, and explore different sides always. I like to hear from almost everyone that is on the internet, because that's where all my sources were. So I'd listen to academics, speakers, or just popular figures, anyone who would have something to say or certain opinions, and shows as well. And then I started reading some books in philosophy specifically, and then that taught me more on how to arrange my ideas when it comes to accepting and rejecting things.
What books do you read?
Are you familiar with Marcus Aurelius?
Yes.
There was this book, it's called Meditations. It's beautiful. Yeah. It was actually a recommendation from one of my friends. I read it and it was beautiful.
I've heard of it, but I haven't come to read it yet, because I know it's just a collection of quotes, and I don't know how to read a book like that yet.
It's quite heavy. So, okay, I grew up hating reading books, right? But that's because I was exposed to a lot of fiction, and I realized I hate fiction. I can't read novels. I want to, but I can't. I try. but I think now it's changing. So that was in the past. So I started reading things that are practical, like things based on true stories, fiction. I think one of the first books I read was it called How to Start Worrying and Start Living or something like that.
Is
I
that
can't
by
remember
like
much.
Dale Carnegie?
Yeah, it was. Yeah, that's right. And there was like Tuesdays with Maury. There were quite a few back in high school. And then meditations was when I first came for foundation. And it was like this guy, basically, he was the sixth Roman emperor, right? And he wrote these things to himself. It wasn't like a book he wanted to write to people. He wrote it to himself, and it was a bullet point style. And I loved that. When I heard bullet point, I was like, yes, I'm going to read that because he gets to the point, no creative writing and all that stuff. I was like, great, I can just get to the point, see what he has to say. I love that. I don't want the bullshit. Let me go through. I read it and I was like, okay, this is interesting. And then he talks about death and certain things he learned throughout his life from his father, the people around him, and the lessons he got. And it was just like all slaps about reality, slapping you left and right, making you understand stoicism and what it means, because that's what he stood for. In philosophy, you've got stoicism, and it's the idea of struggle and carrying your crap with you and not complaining and just doing your job like you should.
Yeah.
And he talks about how an ant, doesn't wake up in the morning, for example, and gets all warm and, the blanket is like around and wrapped around. It's like, no, it doesn't do that. It just wakes up and does what it's supposed to do. And you sit there complaining about what you want to do today and stuff like that. And it's like, shame on you or something along the lines. I need to read it again, by the way. But yeah, he makes you wake up. So it was kind of a wake-up call to understand purpose and what you need to do. And then from there, I think I've listened to Jordan Peterson, Sam Harris, and a lot of scientists as well. Like I got to know a lot of them through Joe Rogan because he interviewed almost anyone who was bright in some field, from MMA to science to politics. I was like, okay, this is interesting. And then I would go to each one of them and I would really dig in deep. For example, with Jordan Peterson, I had to make sure this guy is not some, he's not a fake intellectual. You know what I mean? He was a proper clinical psychologist who did a lot of work for different things. And then, I think that's usually my path. I go there, I read all the lectures, or I watch all the lectures, the podcasts, anything related to that. Yeah. And then I collect my information, I get all these inputs, and then I start filtering. And then I go through phase 2, which would be, being skeptical about what they said, see the other side, what they say about that, how they think, and then taking what I'd feel most comfortable with. That would be aligned with logic and rationality and my belief system.
Yeah. I'm smiling because it's very similar to like the sort of things, like the sort of evolution that I went through as well. It is the Joe Rogan podcast. The Joe Rogan podcast, you just interview so many people, right? And it's like it's possible to have this like sort of varied diet. People talk about having a varied diet in terms of what you eat, but they don't talk about in terms of the information you consume, right? So like for the first time I was like, oh my God, it's like, okay, I'm listening to like vegans, I'm listening to like meditation gurus, I'm listening to like psychologists. It was really, really cool actually. And that was like, I don't know, it's kind of like a weird moment. It was like, wait, I can think more than I usually do. But at the same time, like what you said, I do have to make sure that what is said by the guests is in line or doesn't contradict with my belief system, which for both of us is Islam, right? It's like, and then I think the things that resonate with me the most is things that I hear from like a Western academic, and I'm like, yeah, but Islam already had this like 1400 years ago. I'm like, okay, cool. And that's sort of the way I orientate myself in terms of the diet I consume. I mean, I listen to a lot of things, but that's the sort of filter that I have to put it through to come to the point that I can accept it. And it seems similar. It seems similar to you.
Yeah, it's like you said, you have a diet for what you take in and what you don't want to take in, and that's, I think, the one more important than the diet that you consume in food. Those inputs, because you get it from all different sources every day. and not only from the internet, and the internet is already a very dangerous place that is filled with false information, misleading facts, and all these fake researches done by a Harvard student. For some reason, it's always the same student. I don't know why. It's always that Harvard student who did the same research, and it's not, valid. And I think it comes also from mistakes that you do in the past, and being very naive and like, oh yeah, I'm so sure I'm right, or just because I'm stubborn, I cannot change my mind. And that was something I think you kind of get over at some point when you're young. And the sooner that is happening, the more likely you're gonna find better information and just truer resources.
Can I ask, how did you read Meditations? Did you just like read it quickly in one sitting, or did you like read a quote and then think about it?
I couldn't. It's too heavy to read in one session. Like you'd be like, okay, I don't want to do that anymore. So I read, I think, through a month. It took me a month to read. So I would read some, and then, like before I sleep, most of the time it was before I slept, I would read, and then I would just sit back and kind of reflect on the things he's saying, and I kind of connected with, for example, Islamic point of views, like you said, that was said 100 years ago. I'm like, that's interesting. Well, I like that, you're kind of supposed to keep struggling and go to take the right decisions, even though it's hard and it's going to suck and it's going to be boring. And instead of complaining, just do it, And I would just sit down and think about it. Then I would sleep, wake up the next day, read some bits. I didn't read a lot per day. I think I read only like a few pages, like 10 pages or less.
Mm-hmm.
And it's a small book, It's like, it's literally very small. And it's all bullet points and chapters. But what they called it was books. They do not put chapters there because that was translated. I read the Gregory Hayes translation. Mm-hmm. And he puts like book 1, book 2, book 3, book 4. And it kind of starts in the middle, which was kind of weird. So the whole first quarter, I think, or half, talked about other things, about everything related to Marcus Aurelius.
Yeah, so a bit more of an introduction before it goes into it.
Yeah, it was like an introduction, preface kind of thing, but it was also from his perspective. Because apparently the story is this guy who wrote this book, after he wrote it himself, he died, but then they found this book and they were like, whoa, this is awesome. Let's release it and publish it and take advantage of it, because it's all beautiful stuff. And they did, and it's like he didn't have ulterior motives. There was a lot of sincerity. And there was like this really cool thing. As he was talking, he kept saying the word gods. He was talking about the gods and everything. And then throughout the end, he changes that. He changes his tone because he was writing this throughout, period of time. At the end, he started saying God, like he stopped using the plural part. I was like, but why did he stop? Well, what is it the translation or what? But yeah, that was something I noticed. I was like, well, that's kind of interesting to see.
Yeah. What are some of the pearls that you take with you? Is it mostly to do with stoicism and like you just have to carry on with the struggle regardless of how difficult it is, like the ant?
I think one of the parts was thinking how things could go bad and end up doing nothing about it. So you would give up the possibility for a certain possibility in the future that things could go back, and you end up doing nothing. I think that struck me very well. And I think I have it on my WhatsApp. There was this quote I put as my WhatsApp status. It says, "You're out of step. You're neglecting you're out of step. You're neglecting the gifts of nature to hang on someone's words in the future." Basically, you're worried about what someone could say few weeks from now or a few days from now, and you're just neglecting the gifts of nature, like what you've been given, your abilities, your senses, hearing, seeing, and all of that. Just because you're afraid someone who doesn't even know you that well could say, "Oh, look at him, he's doing that and this." That's something that I found very interesting.
Oh, okay, man, I need to read it. But I feel like if I read it, I'm just gonna like read one quote and just like think about it. It's like, what does it mean? Because it's like,
you'll just be like, huh? What just happened?
But it's not. How can you be sure that what your interpretation of it is correct though?
I don't know if it's correct. If the interpretation is correct. This is what I like about reading this philosophy kind of books, is that you'll end up always having what you think as an option. It's not like you're forced to think this is his interpretation. And it's not like a holy text where you couldn't, have your own interpretation as well. So the better exercise in reading something is to also have your own idea about it, not only just taking what the writer says or the author says about something.
I think that's the best way to internalize a text. Have you read The Little Prince by Antoine de Saint-Exupéry?
Who is it by?
Antoine Saint-Exupéry.
Interesting name. No, I haven't. What is it?
It's basically a children's book about this little alien that gets stuck in the desert. It's like it's the most translated book of all time, but it's like this thick, and it's literally a children's book, but it's like one of the most famous books of all time. And I think I get that in the sense that it's written so simply, but like meditations, it has some deep ideas that you really need to think about. And like you can really easily, you can just go find a commentary, right? But that's not the point of a book like that. And I'm guessing like for meditations, you can just as easily you can go into a commentary and like have someone explain to you what every quote means. But it's like that's not the point of the book, is it?
Definitely not. Probably those kind of books require heavy thinking, and I think some books are made to read not once. Some books you will read more than once, and every time you read them, it's kind of a different perspective you have. I'm sure you've watched movies, for example, and you watched them a few years back and now, and you'd be like, wait a minute, I see it differently. I see the whole thing differently. I do not understand it the same way. I'm like, whoa, I kind of like it more now, or maybe I like it less. What's going on?
Yeah.
Same thing with books. I like that as well. That's a huge reason why you would do that.
There's a quote I like. It's like, you can never read the same book twice because, the second time you're different.
Always different. Because you have new information and you're kind of applying them and taking them again. It's like a double filtration system. You're getting all this information in your brain and your intelligence is meant to process them. And then you're going to use that again to take the information again. It could be more useful the second time than the first time.
Yeah. There's part of me that feels that this way about the Quran as well. Like I can't go to say that I'm learned about it, but I know bits and pieces.
That's true. That's very true. I think how long have you been reading it, for example?
Probably since I was like 9 or 10, like properly.
And it's always the same thing. You can never read it the same all the time. It's almost impossible.
Yeah. And it's like, that's a beautiful thing about it, right? And it's like the last revelation, it's the final miracle, and it has so much, if there's one book that you can own that you should read, it's just that, read it over and over and over again, and every time you'll find something different.
So it's the greatest book, to be honest with you. I find it like the ultimate reference to anything.
Of course. Yeah. And it's like, and then once you're living through your life, it's like, well, everything that you live through can relate to that book in some way. And it's so cool. It's so cool.
It stands the time. That's one of the strongest points about it, is that it stands the time test. Whether you're 10 or 80, you're going to read it and think 30 times before you go to the next verse. And the pondering part is already a whole journey, man.
Yeah.
It's a whole thing by itself.
Yeah. But inshallah, I'm gonna spend more time doing that, because it like so many people, like, they're concerned about in Ramadan, right? You're supposed to finish the Quran, like read it quickly. It's like, that's not the point. The point is, if you read one juz, right, 20 pages, but you can read it with like proper contemplation, proper reflection, that's worth more than reading the whole Quran. So that's something I want to work on in the future, inshallah. Anyway,
one of my friends actually helped me with that. So him and I, we started doing this thing where you read every day consistently. It doesn't matter how much, like whether it's one verse or 10 pages, you read every day. You never stop. So we started that in last Ramadan, and then we're still continuing until now. It's amazing.
How do you do that? Do you just like tell each other what you think about the verses, or is it just
We don't. It's just a thing we started, but we don't necessarily update each other all the time. But I am still doing it. It is no, because that's the thing. Even when it comes to anything you do in life, if you do a little bit every day, that's enough. The little consistency is more important than the volume that you do. You know, like how you said in Ramadan, everyone wants to do like what 50 pages a day or 30 pages or one juz. That's the problem. It's like you look at volume, you're not looking at the why you're doing it.
Yeah, and then it comes back to the hadith of like Allah loves something small but consistent more than
the most beloved deeds to Allah are the ones that are small but consistent.
Yeah. Anyway, moving on from that a bit, you spoke about like how you were doing work, but you still had time to do the things that you were interested in your free time. So like I want to touch on that a bit. Like what sort of things are you doing in your free time?
All right, so I've been going to the gym consistently. I haven't stopped.
The gun show. The gun show.
Yeah, man. The guns are here, man. Don't worry. What else? I've been playing a lot of games. I don't know why. It's a thing I'm starting apparently during work. I play a lot of games. I started playing Civilization. I'm not sure if you know the game. It's a pretty cool game. You start an empire and you're supposed to dominate different empires. It's cool. I chose Salahuddin, and then you can choose religion and you can. It was fun.
I played also 300 hours of your time.
Oh yeah, it's just worth it. It's so fun. It's so fun. And I'm playing games. I'm going out more than I used to. After like work hours, obviously. And what else am I doing? I'm reading. I'm watching lectures, doing courses. And I'm doing this.
What sort of lectures? What sort of courses?
Oh, I mean, okay, things would be related to my future work. So I did data analytics. I did digital marketing courses. I did UX and design courses. All of that I managed to finish the past 2 months.
So you really,
these things were fun. Yeah. Sorry?
You're really leveling up in the last few months.
Yeah, I think also in quarantine that's where it started. Dude, also I wanted to ask you, how was your quarantine? What did you do
in my hotel for two weeks?
Yeah. No, I mean the quarantine during what from March up until like pretty much now.
A lot of the same things that you've been doing, except playing games. I guess I've been reading a lot. I've been, it's hard to say that. When you think back on it, it's hard to say what you did, but it's like I think I did a lot of little bits and pieces. It's like I always like if you give me enough time, I'll always find a project to do. I mean, I started a podcast. I started a damn podcast in quarantine because I was so bored. And it's like, this is a good idea. Ever since I listened to Joe Rogan, it's like, okay, he doesn't really have a brand. He just talks to people. And it's like, I could do that. I know a bunch of people. I could do this, and then I did it. But it's been good. I've been making videos. It's just, I don't really have a problem being by myself because, like I said, I'm going to find something to do. What about you?
By the way, that's a part of being high in conscientiousness, if you know that. Because you know how it's broken down into two things, orderliness and, you have industriousness. Now, industriousness, it's basically the fact that you cannot sit down and do nothing about your time right now. If that something bothers you so much, then you're high in conscientiousness or specifically industriousness.
I can do nothing for a while, but like after like a few hours, I'm like the guilt gets to me, and I'm like, no,
there we go.
Do something.
That guilt is everything about your conscientiousness part.
Is this the Myers-Briggs personality tests? Do you know?
I've done actually a couple of tests. This was one of them. What was your code for the personality test?
EY something, FJ.
Y? Was it ENFJ?
One of those, ENFJ1 or something.
Oh, okay. Mine was ENFP. It's called the campaigner or the champion, something like one of them.
Oof.
But
so, are those your high school nicknames?
They changed the champion because I cannot go around telling people, hey, I'm the champion. I have to be humble. Too much fitna. I have to kind of calm down. So they called it a campaigner after that. But
Bro, when you wear a suit, you are the fit now.
Ooh, I cannot, man. This episode should be censored right now.
Remember how we met and we started talking about this stupid joke about the 50-second step or something? I don't even remember what we were talking about.
That was, oh God, yeah, I remember. It was the new accommodation, and you were going up, and I was going down, and you were waiting at some at some place, and I don't know who said what, but it was like you're still waiting for me at the 50-second step.
Yeah.
Or something like that. It was the stupidest joke.
It's the weirdest thing, but we keep bringing it up for some reason.
Yeah, it was fun too. It was like, hey, it's stupid, why not bring it up? It's like, hey, brain, let's do that. It's like, why? Just do it,
Yeah. Well, so what have you been up to in quarantine?
Quarantine, it got weird, man. I didn't get a haircut until now. So you can see my hair is very messy. I started doing finance. I don't know why. I watched something about economics and finance and how things work with money. And I was like, okay, I'm pissed. Why don't I understand these things? I feel like a lot of people do. And I'm not missing a brain part not to understand it. And, this is money. I should know this from a young age, but they don't teach us that stuff. Yeah. So I was like, okay, let me go on a crash course. And I started doing banking first. I wanted to understand how banks, money, all of that. Where is money? Where is that? Is it supposed to be real? Are people really having that much money? Do we have more money than we think? All these questions were popping through my mind. I was like, okay, I'm done. I'm pissed. Let me get through this thing. And I started understanding bit by bit, and I managed to finish the course. It was from Khan Academy, I think. Wow. It was pretty nice. And then nothing. We worked out in the room. It was a bit depressing. And then we cooked a lot. And nothing else. There was nothing else to do. Nothing, absolutely nothing, except study, courses online or whatever, and that's it. Yeah, nothing else to do. And Minecraft. Oh, yeah, Minecraft was good.
Oh my God. For some reason, Minecraft is like making a resurgence for some reason. I don't understand it. It was popular like 8 years ago, and now it's popular again.
Yeah, it's the quarantine that started again. It's like, what do I do now? If I cannot go outside my room, I can go outside in Minecraft. Do that. But now it's more chilled out, you can go out. You just have to wear the mask.
Yeah. I know. I mean, hopefully I'll see you again soon, though. I won't be back in Malaysia until November, but, you'll be living on campus, won't you?
Oh, yeah. I'll be in the old accommodation.
Wow. I'll be in Uni V. We've like swapped places.
So you won't be waiting at the 50-second step?
Oh my God.
Okay, Uni Village is fine though. I go there all the time, so we will meet for sure.
I think it's probably a good place for us to end this discussion. But like before we go, I wanna ask you like back to the topic of more like in terms of career and personality development, right? Like where do you see yourself going in the future? Like what sort of direction do you want to head towards?
To be honest with you, I have no problem working in computer science as long as it doesn't have to do with the software engineering part. So if I were to go in a managerial position in computer science, that's fine by me. But then because I can speak the tech people's language, I've been there, I know how it works. And I can, keep talking with clients about what they want and what they need and all that stuff. But I see myself doing business development most of the time. And as you know, digital marketing and sales is like toppings of business development. So if you understand that, it's good. It's a good start. And other than that, I think it will be strategies and analytics. That's for sure.
So much more of the bigger picture things rather than the like
100%
finer.
Yeah. Yes. And I see it more on non-technical, bigger picture, less specifics, constantly different changes, something dynamic, an industry that doesn't change, that keeps changing. And that would be, marketing as well as computer science. These are very dynamic industries, actually. And same with business and entrepreneurship.
I was gonna ask you that. Like, you seem like someone that would start his own business.
Not now for sure. And I'll be honest with you, it's a whole, difficult discussing journey, and I'm not cut out for it right now. I don't think I have what it takes to be one. Because people think it's easy. I swear to God, it's super difficult. And if you don't have what it takes, you can't do it. You will fail a few times. But hey, I think I would do it after a few years of getting experience. But I don't want to go blind and mess up without having the knowledge I could have had in a few years. So why not?
So now your mission is kind of just to like make yourself more knowledgeable and gain experience. See
just
what
keep
it is
leveling
like.
up. Just keep leveling. I want to go like suck as much knowledge as possible from everywhere around me, and then come back and it's like, hey, I know what I'm talking about. Let's start. That's I think where I want to go with.
But then it comes down to the fact like, the more you know, you don't know things.
Exactly.
And
that's another paradox, man. It's hard. It's hard.
Yeah.
But as long as we're talking in a certain field or in something that you want to learn more all the time and you don't want to just get used to the whole routine, then I think it should be fine. Because you will be learning, of course. No, you never stop learning. It's not like one day I'll stop learning, like, okay, I'm ready. I'll never be ready, It's impossible. So you just have to equip yourself with foundations, and from there you go forward.
Well, if you are ever in need of, keep me in your thoughts, keep me in your du'as. So like if you ever want to start a business, hit me up. Maybe we can do something together.
Of course.
It'll be pretty fun.
It will be. I mean, in fact, you are Malaysian, so it's perfect. I'm not. I'm a foreigner. We can start a company together.
You're just wow. You're not accepting me for who I am anymore.
Minority. I'm a minority in Malaysia, and it's not fair. So I could play that card.
Yeah. I wanted to talk to you more about that, if you didn't mind. Like, I'm conscious that this is stretching a bit, but like.
I know it's fine. I'm 100% transparent.
Okay, so your identity, right? You are Syrian, originally?
Yep, fully Syrian.
And migrated to Malaysia. It's migrated, right? Or not? I don't know what migration means. It just means you're living somewhere else.
In 2012.
After living in Syria?
Yeah.
So basically tell me your story, because I don't think I've ever heard it.
Okay. So basically, I was living in Syria. Everything was normal and cool until the war started. And that was when my dad was like, all right, we're going to piss off from here. You need to continue your education, and this is not the place to do it. So let's go to Malaysia. My brother, he's been here actually for 15 years. So he went here. He did uni, and then he worked. He had his startup and everything, and had his company for a while. And then he got married as well. So he did the whole thing in Malaysia. Most of his life was in Malaysia. And then he was like, all right, guys, why don't you come here? I know this country. I know how it works. I could help you out. Things would be easier for you to relocate here rather than somewhere else where you didn't know what to do. Like, okay, let's do that. We did that. And, in Syria, you don't learn very, very good English. So you can get by, but it's not enough to go educational. It's not enough. So I had to kind of go and adjust my whole knowledge and everything I know in Arabic and translate it to English, in the school and high school and everything. So it was a bit tough. It was a tough transition. Thank God I was fast in adapting. So I learned the language quick. I managed to make friends, and things just like in 2 years, it was a struggle of understanding who I am. We just happened, we left, and it was confusing. And then boom, you understand how it's gonna work. You understand how it's gonna work, and you make friends, and things get easier from there.
Yeah.
But it took some time. It definitely took some time to do that.
For what it's worth, like your English is like pristine and probably better than a lot of people's that speak English natively.
The problem is I had no choice. Do you know what I mean? Like when you're in a place where, as a foreigner, you won't be okay. Depends, because I was from Syria, right? So I think in the beginning, by the way, the image of foreigner wasn't negative in a sense. I think it's a bit declining by time. But at the beginning, it was pretty good. You know, you wouldn't feel like a minority. You know, especially if you're a Muslim and Arab, you wouldn't feel very foreign in this country.
Yeah.
But it was still the cultural barrier, you know, and talking with people that took some time. But making friends with international people helped me a lot, and a lot of my friends were Malaysian as well. So it was kind of a mix of everything. And people only spoke English there, so I was like, okay, well, I have to speak English, you know. And the school I went to, the high school, there were a lot of Arabs, but they still spoke in English, you know. So you kind of had to go with the flow.
But at least you had that sort of like, you know, with Arab friends, you could translate a bit and be like, what does this mean in Arabic, right?
Yeah. And there were a few people who were in similar shoes, you know. So that helped as well. And I think watching a lot of videos and reading some books and movies and series, all that stuff kind of helps.
So wait, so you moved here when you were 12? Was when you
12,
were 12?
That's right.
And you read meditations when you were like foundation must be like 17.
17, that's right.
Bro, that's like in those few years you learned English to a level that you would be able to contemplate it. Yeah, that's like tabarakallah. That's really, really amazing, bro.
I have to give credits to like a lot of the credits had to go to my parents. They did whatever they could to put me in a position where I could learn, or they provided for me to be able to go forward. Otherwise, there is no way I'd be able. I mean, thank God, and thank God for my parents as well.
In terms of your identity, like, how do you sort of see yourself now? I mean, I'm guessing you see yourself purely as Syrian, right? But like, what sort of relationship do you have with your country now?
Right now, okay, given my views at the moment, I would yeah, I'm Syrian, you know, but so what? It's like it's not everything about me is Syrian, you know. Half of my knowledge, or most of my knowledge, most of my personality, everything was it grew up in Malaysia, not in Syria. Most of the friends that I see myself as a bit of a Malaysian, even if I wouldn't be like in the eyes of the others. Like, I know I grew up here, a lot of like I hit puberty in Malaysia. Come on, that counts for something, you know. So it's like, yeah, but a part of me is Malaysian and a part of me is Syrian, but my culture, yeah, it has to be more Syrian, I would say. At the same time, I love Malaysian food. I'm kind of a bit of both. I used to eat nasi lemak sometimes for breakfast in school, you know.
That's the number one indicator.
That's the number one indicator. But there is a red flag on me, which is I cannot eat durian yet. That's a red flag, I know.
Bro, I don't. I'm sorry. Like, there are certain criteria. You gotta, nasi lemak is one, you passed that, but like, durian, come on.
I couldn't. I tried, you know, I guess I'm not cut out yet. Maybe one day, we'll see.
Yeah. So,
yeah, it's like nationalism and having that pride in where I came from doesn't exist very strongly in me, because I see it as, hey, I mean, I'm proud of the culture, sure, I'm proud of what we do, how we talk and everything, our manners. But I'm not gonna be acting like I'm so proud of something that I didn't really have participation in. You know, I didn't have any kind of choice to be Syrian or not. I just happened to be Syrian. It's like taking pride in where you came from goes to a certain extent. So it's like, you know, you're not the one who decided where you're going to be conceived, or you didn't decide, you know, where you're going to be from. So that stops at a point. So this is where me and nationalism kind of part ways.
Yeah, in a way, because you had no power over that decision. It doesn't mean like you have, you know, you don't own that decision.
Yeah, it's like, why are we so proud of, I don't know, ancestors from 1600s or 1500s of what they did? What about you? What are you doing? It's like, well, nothing. Well, exactly. You're doing nothing. So what's your point? It's like, what are you proud of? You did nothing to be Syrian, or you did nothing to be from X or Y country.
And then one of the beautiful things about Islam is that, you know, we don't see color. And the only thing that kind of separates people is, in the eyes of Allah, is their level of iman, right?
100%. That's the most beautiful thing. It doesn't matter where you come from. It doesn't matter, you know, what your parents did, your background, all that. It's like your piety is the indicator, nothing else. And not even the piety in front of people. So because that's one thing, right? But the piety in front of God, and that's only something God knows. So it leaves it not up to people to decide kind of where you should be on the value system. And I think that's something to think about.
Do you see yourself going back to Syria, or like what's your relationship with that?
Not anytime soon, for sure. Because if I want to go forward, look, I can go back, but not now to rebuild or to do things better, give back to the people that I know or I knew. So for now, no, I wouldn't go back. There is still a long journey before going back. That's for sure.
Mm-hmm. But you're not against it. It's like, but it's like
I'm not against it. Just
you need
not
to be
now.
a certain level first before you're open to that idea.
Yeah, and something bad happened. So as time passed, my Arabic started getting worse and worse, 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 and that's not something good, and I'm not proud of that. So I'm gonna get back at reading in Arabic to freshen up my vocabulary and all of that, because it's important. It's my mother tongue language, which unfortunately I do not use as much as I should.
Mm. All right, khair, bro. Inshallah. I think that's a good point to end our discussion. It's been beautiful catching up with you, bro. And
Same. I'm so happy we got to talk.
Yeah. For one, thank you for reaching out and being like, you know what, after after I saw your long conversation on my post, I was like, and then you reached out, you're like, I wouldn't mind being on the podcast. I'm like, okay, cool. Yeah. It's just, I messaged you yesterday, like, you want to be on tomorrow? Sure. So again, Jazakallah khair for making the time. I really appreciate it.
Thank you so much for the invite, man. I really appreciate it.
No worries. And I'm excited to see where you go in the future.
Same. And we're going to see a lot of each other in the future on the 52nd step.
Oh my God.
Yep. I'm sorry I had to bring it up.
Soon, inshallah. Yalla. All right, bro. Take care.
Take care. Good talk. Assalamu alaikum.
Yalla. Wa alaikum salam.